I remember that room like it's burned into my memory. Dark wood panels, heavy leather chairs, and the kind of silence that feels louder than shouting. The air smelled like old money and fresh coffee, and everyone in that room believed they already knew how the story would end. Everyone except her. And maybe me. I'm Daniel Harper, and I was sitting near the back that day, not because I didn't belong, but because I didn't want to be seen. I had known the deceased, Richard Coleman, for years. Business partner, mentor, sometimes enemy, sometimes friend. A powerful man, ruthless when he needed to be, admired by many, feared by more, and married, for 32 years, to a woman almost no one in that room bothered to look at. Her name was Eleanor Coleman. She sat alone in the second row, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the polished table at the front. No diseñadores, no diamonds flashing under the lights. Just a simple navy blue outfit and a wedding ring that looked worn thin by time. People whispered around her, but not about her. They whispered over her, past her, like she was part of the furniture. Richard's sons from his first marriage were there, Mark and Jason, both dressed like they were already planning how to spend the inheritance. His sister Linda sat stiffly, lips pressed tight, calculating. Lawyers, distant cousins, business associates, all circling like vultures, polite on the surface, hungry underneath. And Eleanor? She might as well have been invisible. I'll admit it. Even I underestimated her. I knew her only as Richard's quiet wife. The woman who brought homemade food to company picnics. The one who left early from parties. The one who listened more than she spoke. In a world that worships loud confidence, Eleanor had mastered the art of being overlooked. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading the will. Formal language, legal phrases, the kind that makes people lean forward, pretending patience while waiting for numbers. Specific bequests came first. A vacation house to Mark. Investment accounts to Jason. Jewelry to Linda. Charitable donations that made Richard look generous even in death. Heads nodded. Smiles flickered. Everything was unfolding exactly as expected. Eleanor didn't react. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She just listened. Then the room shifted. The lawyer paused, adjusted his glasses, and said, "And now, the remainder of the estate." You could feel it, the collective inhale. Including all primary properties, controlling shares of Coleman Industries, remaining liquid assets, and intellectual holdings. Mark actually leaned forward. Jason's foot bounced. Linda's fingers tightened around her purse. "Shall pass in full to my wife, Eleanor Marie Coleman." Silence. Not the polite kind, the stunned kind. The kind where time seems to stutter. I watched Eleanor lift her head slowly. Not dramatically, just enough to look forward. Her face didn't change much, but her eyes did. For the first time, they were fully awake. Mark laughed. A sharp, disbelieving sound. Jason muttered something under his breath. Linda stood halfway out of her chair, already protesting. "There must be a mistake," Mark said, loud enough to break the shock. "Dad wouldn't." The lawyer raised a hand. "The will was updated 6 months ago. Mr. Coleman was a sound mind. Multiple witnesses. Fully notarized." Jason turned toward Eleanor then, really looked at her, like noticing a stranger in the room. "You knew about this?" he demanded. Eleanor met his gaze calmly. "No," she said. Her voice was soft but steady. "I didn't." That seemed to anger them more. Accusations flew. Words like manipulation, coercion, gold digger. Words that made no sense when aimed at a woman who had spent 3 decades standing quietly behind a powerful man. I stayed silent, watching, remembering things no one else seemed to remember. I remembered Eleanor bringing Richard lunch every day during the early years when the company was bleeding money. I remembered her sitting alone in hospital corridors during his surgeries while his son sent flowers but didn't show up. I remembered overhearing Richard once say, after too much bourbon, "She's the only reason I didn't lose everything." People assume power looks loud. They assume influence demands attention. But sometimes the strongest presence in the room is the one nobody notices until it's too late. The lawyer continued, ignoring the chaos. "There is an additional letter Mr. Coleman requested be read aloud." That shut everyone up. He unfolded a single sheet of paper. "To my family," he read. "If you're hearing this, then I'm gone. and you're probably surprised. Eleanor, if you're listening, I'm sorry I never said this enough. You carried me when I was unbearable. You believed when I was reckless. You stayed when leaving would have been easier. This is not a reward. It is recognition. I felt my throat tighten. The lawyer kept reading. To my sons, I gave you opportunity, education, and independence. What you build from here will be yours. What I built belongs to the person who protected it when I couldn't. Eleanor closed her eyes. Linda scoffed. Mark stood up, furious. This is insane. She doesn't know how to run a company. That's when Eleanor finally stood. The room quieted again, not because she demanded it, but because something in her posture changed. She wasn't shrinking anymore. I don't need to run it, she said gently. I already have. Confusion rippled through the room. For 20 years, she continued, I reviewed contracts. I advised Richard on personnel. I managed crises you never knew about because he didn't want you worried. I stepped back so you could step forward. She looked at Mark and Jason, not accusing, just honest. This didn't come from nowhere. No one had a response. I realized then how blind we'd all been. The will reading ended in tension, whispers, and rushed exits. Lawyers exchanged business cards. Threats of court battles were murmured. Eleanor sat back down, hands slightly trembling now that the moment had passed. As people left, I stayed behind. She noticed me standing there and gave a small, tired smile. Daniel, she said, thank you for staying. I should be thanking you, I replied, for reminding me what strength actually looks like. She laughed quietly. Strength isn't loud. It's patient. I walked out of that room changed. Weeks later, headlines would explode. Lawsuits would be filed and dismissed. Analysts would marvel at how smoothly Eleanor took control of Coleman Industries. Profits rose. Employees flourished. Decisions became humane without becoming weak. The lonely wife was lonely no more. But here's the truth. She had never been weak. She had just been unseen. And if this story made you think about the quiet people in your life, the ones who don't demand attention but carry the weight anyway, then don't let this moment pass. Like this story, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us. The most important names are often called last, but they echo the longest.